at the World Workshop, no, at the YRO conference where there were thousands of workshops offered, what I attended was a World Workshop on dance. So where they taught us how to really move our hips if we want to, the African dance, and then like Egyptian dance where your neck goes like that. So it was really fun. And that's an example of all the things that were happening in the NGO conference, but also some really serious ones. So that was one memorable thing. But also the final, I think that was the final day of the official conference, which ended maybe about 5:30 in the morning, when that 4 o'clock, when finally they accepted that version that Tati had really, in a way, crafted so that it could be acceptable. So the difficulty of doing that was also memorable. I think the person that I really wanted to see was Supatra, because she's the one, Supatra Masdit, who headed the NGO conference, because she was Asian, a Thai, and she headed the whole big thing, no, the whole NGO conference. And for me, the impact was really several things. Partly the energy, the diversity, the fun and the sisterhood of the whole NGO conference, but also the difficult work of negotiating that document.
When I attended, I was part of the NGO, and there were many of us, but at the time, of course, we were so ideologically divided. There were red and yellow NGOs, and there were many of us. What I liked most about the conference was it was so diverse and it was so inclusive. There were women from first world countries, and of course what we would call the third world countries. There were many leaders who interacted with NGO participants. My memory is that because we were part of the NGO group, we had to there was no chair available for us. I looked at the picture and we were squatting in the lobby. But the impact on me is that, of course, through time, I joined the government, the Philippine Commission on Women, and I participated in drafting and in all the conferences. I attended the Beijing 5, Beijing plus 10, and all the conferences. So the impact for me is that it gave voices to civil society organization, one of the best legacies of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action.
Memorable experience talaga yung pagpunta sa China, kasi in the first place, yung China mismo napaka-attractive as a seat of a great civilization. So that's one attraction. Second, I really wanted to meet a lot of women who are very active in the women's movement in the different parts of Asia and the world. So, sino yung pinaka-memorable na person? Maybe Hillary Clinton. That's where I heard first her famous quote, "Women's rights as human rights." In the forum we attended, it was raining very hard, Tati, and we really have to make pila to get inside that very small convention hall in Wairau. And so I was able to listen to her from outside kasi hindi na kami nakapasok. And of course, I met a lot of known academics. I was teaching UP Cebu, and the first thing we did together with the UP Center for Women's Studies was to come up with information education campaign about the UN Platform of Action for Women, why it is a very progressive agenda. And so one of our projects was really educate students and grassroots women about the reproductive health rights component of the UN Platform of Action for Women. And then after that, we had, aside from education campaign, at the UP Center for Women's Studies, our women's desks were very active in making programs and innovations like more GSTs, and then more discussions on VAUSI, So for me, the Beijing event was gave more impetus to my advocacy work as a women's rights advocate.
I gave a session on ecological waste management at the NGO forum in Huairou. As early as then, I was advocating for segregation, recycling, reduction, and composting of waste. We had 60 participants in that session with one lone male. At the opening of the conference in Beijing, I met 3 Japanese Soroptimists who saw my pin. They were from Soroptimist International of Kunitachi, and they were the first friendship link of my club, Soroptimist International of Makati. They have visited Manila twice. In 2001, we returned that visit in Kunitachi. To this day, we keep in touch and our friendship remains strong. Being a widow, I attended the widows session at the NGO forum in Huairou. It was so touching to hear this widow from Rwanda. One night, the Hutus entered her home and made her husband kneel in their living room. Despite her pleading, they shot her husband in the head. She described how she went berserk, collecting all the brain particles from the curtains, the furniture, and the walls. She felt that if she could collect all these pieces, her husband could be whole again. She ended by saying that to this day, she sees and meets the murderers of her husband and how hard it is to forgive. And when she did, she vowed she would see her country whole again.
China had just reopened, if you recall, shortly before that, and everything was going big. They even had an Olympic village, I think, that they used to house us, the delegates to the Huairou conference. So my first recollection was that what it was like to live in a socialized housing unit from the Chinese. The bathroom floor was higher than the living room floor. So every time either of us took a bath, the whole place would flood. So I said, uh-oh. So it was an experience meeting like-minded women from different parts of the world. But especially because I saw so many of us from the Philippine NGO formation, because at the time, the SIDA window, remember? You had the group of 7, and I can't remember now and what the other group. But there were these 2 groups fighting for the SIDA event that I recall, of course, was everybody coming out to listen to Hillary Clinton. Not in person, but over the big, big loudspeakers. You know, they set up these loudspeakers all over the outside of that auditorium where she was speaking. And there were probably thousands of women there. Imagine, huh? But otherwise, it was a total experience, meeting, greeting people, having fun. Even the night markets were fun.
After hosting so many conferences, I went out to seek the African National Congress because I know that many of them have already been elected as parliament members, and I wanted to learn their lessons in the anti-apartheid struggle. Most impressive person in the whole NGO sessions for me is a Filipina whose name is Ines Abellana Fernandez, our breastfeeding advocate. Her session was attended by thousands of women who were so inspired by what she was telling them, that breastfeeding is a very important element in life. The Beijing conference for me was highlighted by people who had already won their anti-colonization and anti-dictatorship struggles. For me, that was the takeaway in that conference, that the women delegates shared their lessons on party building, on movement building, and having the government taken into account that the women can be better governors, senators, representatives of their parliament. Well, up to now, we're still struggling to get that into our own country. And we hope that more women who go into government will realize that empowerment is not just taking in all the issues, but empowerment for all, inclusive and resilient.